He thought it would be easy. Walk away. Trade me in for someone shinier, younger, easier to control. A woman who didn't know the real cost of the life he paraded around in. He thought he could leave with a smirk and a suitcase, and that I'd simply disappear into the background of the story he was rewriting without me. But some women don't vanish when you shut the door. Some of us built the house you just walked out of. The day it all began wasn't dramatic. No storm, no slammed doors, just a morning. Sunlight in the kitchen, my baby girl laughing at scrambled eggs, and an email from the man I thought I'd grow old with, my husband, Donald. 5 years of marriage, one child, 1,000 quiet sacrifices, and suddenly he was gone. And he didn't call, he didn't explain, he sent a photo. In it, he stood arm in arm with a blonde who looked barely old enough to rent a car. They were smiling in front of our vacation house, the one I bought, the one I designed, the one I imagined our daughter learning to swim in. A place built with profits from my company, not from his handshakes, not from his charm, from late nights and lonely tears and spreadsheets at 2 a.m. Below the image, two sentences. I've moved in with Amber. My lawyer will send the papers. Amber. He didn't even try to soften the blow, didn't ask how our daughter would react, didn't say goodbye. Just an announcement like I was a client being off-boarded, like this was business. And maybe that was his first mistake. Because unlike him, I actually know how to run one. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was heartbroken. That would come later. What I felt first was awareness, a stillness, the kind that comes before a storm you choose to become. He thought the house was his. He forgot who paid for it. He thought I'd crumble. He forgot who built the foundation beneath his feet. I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I didn't reply with anger. I simply sent back two short lines. Are you sure about that? You might want to check the deed again. Then I blocked his number and smiled at my daughter as if nothing in the world had changed. Because for her, it hadn't. Mommy was still here, steady, unshaken, and Mommy had work to do. See, what Donald never understood is that I was never just the wife. I was the architect of our home, of our wealth, of our entire damn life. He mistook my silence for weakness, my kindness for ignorance. He saw me feeding our baby at 3 a.m. and thought I was too distracted to notice the lies. The hotel receipts, the lake house visits, the jewelry that went missing, the account balances that didn't add up. But I noticed. I always notice. And while he played games with a girl half my age, I was playing chess. I had documentation, surveillance, receipts. I had his entire affair on tape. And better yet, I had the original contracts showing the house he was gloating from was paid for by my business, not his income. That diamond ring he gave her, my grandmother's, the joint account he drained set up for our daughter's education and monitored by my firm. So while he was busy posing for Instagram, I was busy preparing for war. Not a messy, angry war, a silent, surgical one. That night, as the city slept and my daughter curled peacefully in her crib, I sat in my home office, the one Donald never liked because he said it made me too serious. I reopened the folder I'd quietly built over the past year. Not out of suspicion, not even out of mistrust, just instinct. I have learned that instinct is the language of women who have had to survive with no safety net but their own foresight. Inside the folder were documents Donald didn't know existed. Property filings, purchase receipts, tax structures, legal contracts drawn up in case things ever went sideways. He thought he was clever when he told me to put the house in his name to protect our family. I nodded like a good wife. And then I had my lawyer draft a clause that assigned beneficial ownership to me in writing notarized and filed. It was like he handed me the sword I'd now turn on him. But what struck me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how confidently he moved. Like he truly believed I'd done none of this. Like he assumed I'd just hand him everything and retreat. as if the woman who birthed his child and built an empire would now just fold into the wallpaper. The audacity of that belief, that's what drove me. I opened my security dashboard. The lake house had a full set of cameras. I'd installed them after a break-in scare last summer, and I never once told Donald about them. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I learned early in business that the best protection is the one no one knows you have. The footage was crisp. Timestamps, faces, movements. Amber unpacking her clothes in my closet. Donald pouring wine from the bottle I had picked for our anniversary but never opened. They danced, kissed, laughed, all in a space I'd created, paid for, and protected. That was mistake number 2, underestimating the woman who signs the checks. The next morning, I contacted Sarah, my lawyer, the kind of woman who never blinked at high-stakes litigation, and once told a billionaire CEO that he had 5 seconds to get honest or get sued. She came over with coffee and steel in her spine. We spent hours reviewing every file. She pointed to the emails from Donald acknowledging I paid for the house. She noted the LLC structure I'd used to funnel my business profits into real estate acquisitions. Everything was clean, legally unshakable. He has no idea, Sarah said, scanning the documents like a surgeon before a major operation. He really thinks he owns it. He thinks a lot of things, I replied, most of them wrong. We looped in my financial advisor. The college fund was emptied. Nearly $100,000 vanished overnight, funneled into an unknown account. We traced the transfer, offshore, cloaked, but not invisible. These men always think they're smarter than they are. They forget who does the real work. They forget who reads the fine print. Later that day, Rachel, my assistant, messaged me again. Julia, you're going to want to see this. Attached were screenshots from Amber's private Facebook group. Posts filled with glittery captions and shallow gloating. Finally, no more boring wife in the way. Moving in with my dream guy and his house. He says his ex is too busy playing CEO to notice. I laughed. That ex was building a case while she ate her salad. And the part that made my stomach turn wasn't the selfies in my kitchen or the passive-aggressive captions. It was the smugness, the assumption that I didn't know, couldn't know, wouldn't care. That was mistake number 3, confusing dignity with passivity. I stayed quiet. I let them gloat. I let them post. And behind the silence, I built a case that would burn everything they thought they controlled. Then came the call. Blocked number, but I knew that voice. Donald, you think you've won something, he said, venom behind every syllable. You've got a house and a business. Big deal. My lawyers are filing for control of the company. You wouldn't have built any of it without my connections. Without my advice. You owe me. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just pressed record and let him talk. And talk he did. About how I should be grateful. About how Amber gets him. About how I needed to be careful that he'd go for full custody if I didn't comply. You're always working, Julia. Emma needs a stable mother. Amber used to be a nanny. She's amazing with kids. That's when the temperature in the room dropped. You want to take my child? I asked, voice low. Not angry, calculated. I want what's best for her, he replied. And honestly, I don't think that's you anymore. He hung up. I didn't. Because 5 minutes later, Sarah pulled up an email from Donald to an old friend. A message that read, she doesn't need me anymore. Says I slow her down. Her company's worth 3 times what I make. It's humiliating. There it was, in his own words, the truth he never admitted to my face. He didn't want custody, he wanted control. But this wasn't about a child, it wasn't even about love. This was about ego. And nothing terrifies a man like Donald more than a woman who no longer needs his permission to succeed. I remember standing by the window that night, staring at the pale light of the moon, reflecting on the driveway bricks, breathing in the silence that had once terrified me. Now it felt like armor. Stillness is powerful when you know you're the storm. Emma slept upstairs, safe, unaware. And I stood there not as a woman scorned, but as a strategist preparing her final move. Donald had made his intentions clear, claim what he never earned, dismantle what I had built, and recast himself as the architect of my success. It was textbook entitlement, the kind that thrives in the shadows of other people's labor. And now, with Amber's well connected family backing him, he thought his plan was airtight. But that's the thing about airtight plans, they fail fast when exposed to fire. Rachel stormed into my office, tablet in hand. Julia, this changes everything. She thrust it forward. I scanned the screen. A corporate press release in draft format. Donald had been promoted. Chief Financial Officer, effective in 2 weeks. My breath caught, but not out of surprise, out of confirmation. That's why he was doing all this, the money, the house, even Emma. He wasn't just building a new life, he was cleaning the slate for a public image reboot, a polished resume, clean finances, a beautiful younger fiance, a position of power. I didn't say anything for a while, I just stared at that line. Effective next month, Donald Wexler will step into his new role as CFO. Then Rachel spoke again, voice low. Amber isn't just a fling. She's the CEO's niece. There it was. Not lust, leverage. Not passion, politics. Donald hadn't fallen in love. He had made a play, slept his way into influence, leveraged his affair into a promotion. He wasn't betraying me for romance. He was laundering his own mediocrity through nepotism, and he thought I wouldn't catch it. I opened my internal database. Every time Donald had worked late or taken a solo trip to the lake house, it lined up. It wasn't random. It was a schedule, a system, a blueprint of betrayal. I felt something in me harden. This wasn't personal anymore. It was strategic. Sarah turned from her laptop. There's something else. The merger Donald's been working on it involves a direct competitor to your business. I didn't blink. Which one? She told me. I sat down. They weren't just trying to destroy my credibility. They were preparing to swallow my entire company. Donald, the CEO, and Amber had created a triangle of sabotage. They wanted my client lists, my investor network, my IP. And with Donald in place as CFO, he'd have access to proprietary documents, pricing models, sustainability practices, everything that made my business disruptive and respected. But they'd made one mistake. They'd forgotten to check who actually controlled the servers. I pulled up a different terminal, private, encrypted a network only 3 people in the company even knew existed. I watched the logs. There. 3 unauthorized attempts from Donald's laptop to access our protected files. Blocked but logged. Sarah leaned over my shoulder, reading the timestamps. That's attempted corporate espionage. Let's collect more, I said, voice calm. Let him keep digging. Rachel pulled up something else, a chain of emails between Donald and Amber from 6 months ago. They weren't just plotting to leave me. They were writing the blueprint to dismantle me. Once you're CFO, we'll use insider info to bury Julia's business. Uncle Robert says the board will look the other way. She's too naive to notice. Naive. That word landed like a blade. They didn't just want to steal, they wanted to mock me for not stopping them sooner. But here's what they didn't realize. While they were drunk on anticipation, I was already 10 steps ahead. Rachel's fingers tapped across the keyboard. Found something else, she whispered. There's movement between our joint accounts and a set of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. He's been funneling funds for months. Not just Emma's college savings, almost $300,000 altogether. I didn't even flinch, because somewhere inside me I already knew. The money, the timing, the confidence. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had been bleeding me dry slowly and deliberately, setting up a new life on the ashes of mine. But he wasn't just taken from me. He was setting fire to everything my business stood for: ethical labor, sustainability, transparency. Donald and his new corporate allies were building something designed to destroy what I had created. Not just for profit, but to prove they could. To punish a woman who dared to succeed without them. That's when I opened the file I never thought I'd use. Insurance. A folder locked on a server only I could access. Years of spreadsheets, emails, financial oddities I had noticed while managing Donald's investment portfolio. Deals that didn't quite make sense. Transactions that danced too close to illegal. I'd kept it just in case. Now the case had arrived, and it was time to light the match. The next morning, the air felt different. Not lighter, not heavier, just still, like the quiet before an avalanche. I poured my coffee, kissed Emma on the forehead, and walked back into my office where Sarah and Rachel were already waiting. Sarah had dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't stopped working since she found the merger files. Rachel looked like she hadn't blinked in an hour. They both had the same expression, tight-lipped, focused like soldiers before the breach. I sat down, turned to Sarah, and said calmly, "It's time." She nodded. The email was nearly ready, a full report addressed to the board of Donald's company. It contained evidence of attempted unauthorized access to my business servers, video footage of Donald removing business purchased assets from the lake house, screenshots of Amber's private messages bragging about insider access, and most damning of all, internal emails between Donald Amber and the CEO planning to weaponize Donald's CFO position to destroy my company. We also included a digital paper trail leading directly to offshore accounts linked to Donald accounts funded by money siphoned from our joint savings Emma's college fund, and trace amounts from client transaction paths only someone with inside knowledge could have navigated. The subject line was simple: urgent breach of fiduciary trust and criminal activity, immediate review required. Sarah hovered over the send button. "Do it," I said. She clicked. And that's when the chaos began. 15 minutes later, Donald arrived at the lake house. Rachel's phone buzzed a live alert from the security feed. He wasn't alone. Amber followed him in a box in her arms, and behind her, Robert, the CEO, the uncle, the kingmaker. They were carrying files, art documents, still oblivious that every camera in that house had full audio and video. We watched them toast champagne. To the new CFO, Robert cheered. And to my beautiful niece, Donald added, "Who made all this possible?" My stomach clenched. Not from pain, from rage held with surgical precision. They didn't know their world was seconds from collapsing. Robert went on. "Tomorrow we announce your promotion. And by the afternoon, we'll have full legal oversight of Julia's company. Once her books are open, we squeeze her out within a month." Amber laughed. She thinks losing the lake house is the worst thing happening. Wait till she sees the offshore accounts. That's when I froze. Offshore accounts. Plural. Rachel's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Oh my God," she muttered. "There are more." Donald's been laundering money through 3 different shell corporations in Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. This isn't just theft. It's international financial fraud, Sarah finished grimly. Donald hadn't just tried to ruin my company. He had committed crimes that would follow him across borders. I stared at the feed as they kept celebrating, completely unaware. And that's when Robert leaned back and said it. "Once Julia's company is under audit, the merger goes through. We split her market share between our subsidiaries, gut her contracts, kill her ethical model, and buy up her investors. She built it too clean, too slow. This is how it's done in the real world." That was it. That sentence, that smirk. That's when I said, "Send the insurance file, too." Sarah nodded. Within seconds, she attached it, a locked document labeled "Simply Insurance," containing every illegal investment maneuver I'd tracked in Robert's company while managing Donald's portfolio. Inside was enough to trigger regulatory investigations, shareholder panic, and boardroom mutiny. Seconds later, Rachel looked up from her screen. "They're reading it," she whispered. 3 board members are in the dock. Then Donald's phone rang. "We heard it through the feed crystal clear." He answered, "What, who sent what?" His voice changed as he listened. Panic, real raw panic. Robert's face paled. Amber's phone lit up next. One by one, her private Facebook messages were being forwarded to every board member, screenshots of her bragging, laughing at how stupid I was, how easy it would be to dismantle the wife. They all froze. The champagne glass dropped, shattered. Donald lunged for his laptop, frantically typing, probably trying to stop the bleeding, probably trying to spin it. But we were already ahead of him there, too. Rachel had built a fake portal, a honeypot full of useless data dressed up like treasure. It looked like he was accessing our systems. He wasn't. He was just playing with a sandbox while the real server quietly logged every keystroke and IP ping. He thought he was hacking me. Really, I was watching him dig his own grave. And then, as if delivered by the universe itself, the flashing lights arrived. Police cars, 3 of them at the lake house. We watched through the camera feed as Donald opened the door trying to act normal. He was in handcuffs within 30 seconds. Amber screamed. Robert tried to intervene. Didn't matter. They had enough evidence to hold them all. I picked up Emma. She was awake now, looking at me with her big, curious eyes, hugging her little stuffed elephant. See that baby girl, I whispered. That's what happens when people underestimate your mother. The fallout didn't take days, it took hours. By midnight, Donald's promotion was revoked. By dawn, Robert's board privileges were suspended pending investigation. Amber's messages had gone viral inside the company. Every offshore account had been frozen. My lawyer received 3 calls from different board members, each apologizing profusely and promising full cooperation. And the lake house, it was now legally and indisputably mine. The paperwork had been refiled, validated, and recorded. All Donald's claims gone, all his threats empty, his access to Emma revoked by court order pending criminal trial. And my company, it didn't just survive, it soared. Ethical investors, the ones who respected integrity, sustainability, and transparency, came flooding in after the scandal broke. Clients left Robert's firm by the dozens. We opened new offices in 2 cities by year's end. And I never replied to Donald's desperate emails. He tried to apologize, claimed it was the pressure, said he lost himself, said he never meant to hurt me. But I knew the truth. He didn't lose himself. He revealed himself. There's a difference. I framed the email, the one he sent me with a photo of himself holding a champagne glass beside a woman who hadn't even existed in our wedding vows. The same message where he declared the house was his, the future was his, and the lawyers were on their way. It's in my office now, behind glass matted in black, hung just above the chair where I sign partnership contracts and review quarterly earnings. It's not there to hurt. It's there to remember. Because that moment, that smug declaration, wasn't the day he won. It was the day he made his final fatal miscalculation. He thought he was closing a chapter. He didn't realize I was the one holding the pen. The fallout came in waves, clean and cold. The board removed Robert within a week. Shareholders revolted. Investigations opened. Amber tried to rebrand herself as a victim of manipulation. But screenshots don't lie, and the internet is not kind to liars with expensive handbags and hollow apologies. She disappeared back to Ohio. Donald, disbarred from any financial institution, blacklisted from firms across the country. His name now a cautionary tale in executive boardrooms. His crimes are still under investigation, and I hear the penalties may include restitution prison time and permanent financial restrictions. I don't keep track of him anymore. I don't need to. Because once a man has lost everything he tried to steal, there's nothing left to monitor. Instead, I focus on Emma. She's learning to talk now, her words still soft around the edges, her curiosity bottomless. We spend weekends at the lake house, the real one. Ours again. I repainted the walls, donated the furniture, and burned the sheets. Not out of anger, but out of restoration. A cleansing. I planted rosemary along the path to the dock. Emma calls it magic grass because she says it smells like strength. And she's right. She runs through those hallways now, with giggles instead of secrets. Her feet hit the wood with joy, not betrayal. She sleeps peacefully in the master bedroom. No ghosts, no shadows, just love. We've made it ours again, not just with documents or signatures, but with truth, with time, with healing. My company bigger than ever. But that's not the part I'm most proud of. What I'm proud of is that we survived with integrity. In an industry full of shortcuts and silence, we chose the long road, the honest one, and the world noticed. When the media picked up the story, a female entrepreneur outmaneuvering a corrupt CFO, a nepotistic CEO, and a high stakes corporate espionage plot, they asked for interviews. Magazine covers, book deals. I declined most of them. Not out of modesty, but because I didn't need the applause. The silence after a storm is reward enough when you've rebuilt your life by hand. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying him. If I feel foolish for missing the signs, I don't. Because the lessons he taught me about trust strategy, deception, power, they were paid for in heartbreak, yes, but also in growth. I learned that love without respect is just manipulation wrapped in flowers. I learned that silence can be mightier than shouting when the truth is on your side. And I learned that a woman doesn't have to raise her voice to reclaim her life. She just has to own it. I don't wear my wedding ring anymore, but I still keep it. Not in grief, but as a relic. A reminder that I survived something designed to erase me and came out the other side. Not smaller, but sharper. And sometimes when the wind is just right, I sit out on the lake house deck, Emma's laughter echoing behind me, and I reread that old email. The subject line still makes me smile. Moving on. Oh, Donald, you moved on. I moved forward. And now I own everything.